There are two kinds of 2 a.m. The first one, biology calls. You drag yourself out of bed in the dark because you're too tired to deal with the lights. Your brain is foggy. It's emerging from sleep. And you talk yourself into believing that you know this floor plan well enough to navigate it without turning on the lights. You don't. Somehow, in a house full of furniture, in a room full of corners and edges, that one tiny toe finds the one leg on the table that it was never supposed to find, with precision, with commitment, like it was a guided missile aiming straight at the table leg. Your only aim was to drain your bladder, but your toe, for reasons that you can't comprehend, seemed to be aiming at agony. There are two possible feelings that result. One is relief, the quiet, settled, physical feeling of a successful bathroom mission, and your brain says, that felt good. The other feeling is when the toe collides with the table, and in that moment, it doesn't matter that you made it to the bathroom and evacuated your bladder successfully. It doesn't matter that you made it back to bed. It doesn't matter that the trip to the bathroom and back technically was a success. Your brain has absolutely zero interest in celebrating the because it's busy with another louder overriding feeling. That one stubbed toe ruined the whole trip. We've all had another kind of 2 a.m. experience. We seldom connect the two, though. You wake up, your brain won't shut off, your thoughts and your feelings are just scattered, random. Your mind seems to be bouncing a rubber ball around with no direction. You don't feel like you're trying to solve any real-world problem, but your brain just won't stop. You're not consciously trying to go anywhere, but your brain is subconsciously trying to go somewhere. It's on an important journey underneath the noise. Something important is happening. Your brain is aiming like a guided missile. It's aiming at coherence, at cohesiveness. It feels all the disconnects in your daily life, the things you believe that don't quite line up with each other, the values you claim contrasting with the choices you actually make. The story you tell yourself about the story your actions are actually telling. And your brain won't let you sleep, at least until it tries to close the gaps. This is the mental equivalent of stubbing your toe. But a stubbed toe heals relatively quickly, and the odds of it derailing your life are infinitesimal. But a life built on disconnected assumptions, beliefs that were never introduced to each other, never stress tested, never honestly examined, that doesn't just hurt in the dark. It shapes everything or breaks everything. Your relationships, your work, your sense of whether or not your life has any real meaning. I want to talk about 7 questions that your brain is wrestling with at 2 a.m. These are not my questions. They belong to all of us. And I want to give you the names for each of them because it turns out that philosophers for 2,500 years have been working on the same questions that you can't stop thinking about. And they've left some pretty useful tools behind. But before I talk about these 7 questions, I think we should all know why they are important. How we answer these questions determines our worldview. My oldest son asked me, why does it matter if our answers to these questions are coherent, Dad? For me, it matters because integrity with myself is important. I don't want to live a lie, and most of us don't want that. If you can answer these questions in ways that are coherent, meaning they don't contradict one another, then you aren't lying to yourself. This is not just mentally healthy. It's building your life on a worldview that you can genuinely be confident in and that you can defend. The first question is this: what is real? The $64,000 scholarly word for it is ontology. Elon Musk believes that it's statistically highly likely that we are living in a simulation, like a very advanced video game, not as a metaphor, but literally. And that belief about the nature of reality shapes everything. That's his ontology. And whatever premise you accept regarding what is real, it changes what you think about consciousness, about death, about whether or not anything has any real weight. If you start with a different assumption than Elon does about what's real, then you end up in a completely different place. Most people never really examined this one. They just absorbed it from their environment and they carried it forward. But it's the most foundational question on the list. Before your brain can cleanly and clearly articulate what you believe about everything else, you have to have some working answer to what actually exists, what is real. The second question is, where did everything come from? The $64,000 word for it is cosmology. Stephen Hawking spent decades of his life arguing the universe created itself through quantum mechanics. No creator needed. That's his cosmology. And it's not just an academic position. It's existential. It shaped everything else for him. What he thought about God, about death, about science, about whether or not prayer means anything. His cosmology was the foundation everything else was built on. You have one too. Even if you've never used the word, the answer you carry to this question, whether you inherited it, borrowed it, or built it yourself, is underneath everything else you believe. The third question is, who or what is behind it all? The $64,000 word for this is theology. C.S. Lewis was a committed atheist who became one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century, and he didn't change his mind quietly. His theology started to rebuild during one critical conversation in 1931 in Oxford during a late-night talk with J.R.R. Tolkien, author of Lord of the Rings. Lewis loved myth, and he believed that Christianity was a myth, like so many other stories. Tolkien basically asked him, but what if the Christian myth is true? Ancient myths, he argued, are splintered fragments of universal truths that humanity has always been reaching for. The story of Jesus, he posited, is simply the true myth, the one that actually happened. Shortly after that, Lewis accepted the divinity of Christ, not in a church, but while riding in a motorcycle sidecar. One answer to the question, who is behind it all, changed absolutely everything for him. That's theology. And theology sometimes gets a bad rap because people confuse it with organized religion. But theology is just this. If something or someone caused all of this, what are we actually dealing with? That's not a church question. That's an everybody question. The fourth question is, what is a person? The $64,000 scholarly word for this one is anthropology. Peter Singer, the Princeton ethicist, argues that a healthy chimpanzee has more right to life than a severely disabled newborn human, because personhood is about cognitive capacity, not species membership. He teaches it at an Ivy League university, and it flows directly from his anthropology. How you define what a person is determines everything about how you treat them. How you vote, how you parent, how you think about justice, how you make friends, what you believe about yourself and what you are worth, how you think about abortion, euthanasia, how you think about AI. It's not abstract. It's playing out in courtrooms, legislatures, hospital rooms, and in AI algorithms every single day. The fifth question is, how do I know what I know? The $64,000 word for this one is epistemology. Oprah built an entire media empire on the idea that your personal truth is valid because you feel it deeply. Speak your truth became a cultural mantra, and that's an epistemology. It says inner experience is a reliable source of knowledge. Contrast that with someone who says that truth has to survive outside scrutiny. The same world, the same problems, completely different method for deciding what's real and what's reliable. This is vital because we have to reckon with the collision of personal truths. If your truth and my truth directly contradict one another, then which one's actually true? This makes people uncomfortable because it questions the questioner. It asks, by what authority are you drawing any of your conclusions? Is it your authority, education, politics, ethics, religion, God? Personal opinion, someone else's opinion, and what makes that authority count? Most people never wrestle with this question long enough to have an honest answer. And the sixth question is this: what actually matters? The scholarly word for this one is axiology. When Apple prices a product at $1,200 and people line up around the block to buy it, that is axiology in action. They have assigned a value to something that exceeds its utility. Jordan Peterson built his entire public platform on the argument that meaning matters more than happiness, that people need to carry weight, not avoid it. That is his axiology. What you spend your money, your time, your discipline, your suffering on tells you exactly what you actually value, what your actual value system is. Not the one you claim, but the one you genuinely live. And most people don't consciously build their value system. They assemble it by absorbing it from their upbringing, their culture, their wounds, their wants. And then they wonder why it doesn't really feel like theirs. That's because it's not. They just borrowed it from somewhere else. And then the seventh question is there a point to any of this? The $64,000 scholarly word for that one is teleology. Viktor Frankl was a Jew who survived 4 Nazi concentration camps and came out the other side arguing that the will to find meaning is the most fundamental human drive. Not pleasure, not power, meaning. His entire framework for psychology, called logotherapy, is built on a teleological assumption that human beings are purpose-seeking creatures. And when that purpose disappears, people deteriorate. Humans are unique in biology because this is one of our defining traits. Meaning matters to us, whether or not we want it to or not. And Frankl's experience in the camps proved this to him in the worst possible laboratory. Every worldview has an implicit answer to this question, religious and secular alike, because even the person who says there is no ultimate purpose has to decide what to do with their Tuesday afternoon. Ironically, many who believe there is no real purpose make it their purpose to convince everyone else that they are right about there being no purpose. That kind of makes me smile. Whatever people reach for, that is their teleology. So those are the 7 questions that your brain is bugging you with at 2 a.m. Where did everything come from? What is real? What is behind it all? What is a person? How do I know what I know? What actually matters? And is there a point to any of this? So 7 questions, 7 fancy words, ending with logical, that you can use at dinners to impress people. But there's one more logical word I want to mention, and it's the one you already know. Logical. At 2 a.m., when you make it to the bathroom and back without incident, you don't throw a party. You don't lie back down thinking to yourself about how great that was. You just feel it. A quiet, settled, physical, everything worked. You can go back to sleep. But when you find that table leg with your little toe, that's the only thing that exists in the universe for the next 30 seconds. It doesn't matter that you made it to the bathroom. It doesn't matter that you made it back. It only matters what your brain is feeling. Your bladder is empty, but your brain has absolutely zero interest in celebrating that win. It only cares about the throbbing toe and about throttling the person who moved the table. One stubbed toe ruins the whole trip. Your brain works exactly the same way. It's not waking you up at 2 a.m. because it wants a philosophy lecture. It's waking you up because it knows something doesn't feel right. Your brain is feeling, and it will not let you rest until it gets resolved. It doesn't care that you have 3 or even 6 of these 7 questions settled. It can't rest because of the unsettled questions. And it's going to keep finding them in the dark every time with that same relentless guided missile precision that your little toe has for furniture. That low-grade restlessness that you carry around, that sense of something is off even when life looks fine on the outside, that is not random anxiety. That is your logic working. It has detected an inconsistency and can't let it go. But here's the irony that most people miss. We tend to think that logic and emotion are opposites. That if you're feeling something, you're not really thinking clearly, but that assumption is not accurate. Your emotions are often your logic's early warning system. The that you're feeling is actually vital information. And here's one more thing to consider. We despise hypocrisy in others with a particular intensity, don't we? And the reason is not just that it's annoying, it's that inconsistency is visible and our brain responds viscerally to it. When someone claims one thing and lives another, something in us recoils immediately. It stands out like a stubbed toe at 2 a.m. But that reaction is a mirror. The reason it bothers you so much out there is because your brain already knows what inconsistency feels like in here. One of the most courageous things that you can do is go looking for the stubbed toes in your own worldview, in your own mind. The places where what you say and what you believe don't actually match up. Even if one of your answers to those 7 questions doesn't align with the others, you will feel restlessness in your mind, in your soul. And most people don't address these 7 questions with intentionality at all. No wonder the most commonly diagnosed mental illness in Western culture is generalized anxiety disorder. Remember my son's question? Why does it matter if our answers are coherent? Internal consistency on these 7 questions matters for integrity. And here's how I discovered that the hard way. For years, I was a pastor. I believed that God cared about people. So I served, I gave, I poured myself into leading others and spending countless hours trying to make a difference in their lives. But I let one person fall by the wayside. Me. I neglected rest, renewal, my own health, physical and mental. I was so busy living out what I believed about God caring for other people that I forgot that I was one of the people to whom that belief applied. That's the collision of my theology and my axiology. And it cost me my marriage, my job, and very nearly my life. I thought I was being selfless. I thought I was giving myself away completely and that was a virtue, but it wasn't. It was foolishness. It was inconsistency, wearing a halo. My theology said people mattered. My actual daily choices, my axiology said everyone mattered except me. And that internal contradiction broke me to the point that it became an external contradiction. I began treating the people nearest and dearest to me like they didn't matter. The internal irony became an external irony, one for which I paid too high a price, and one for which my family paid the price too. The gap between these unanswered or inconsistently answered questions are the exact coordinates of what is keeping you up at night, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. So here's the thing. You may answer these 7 questions differently than I do. You may answer them differently than your parents did, your pastor, your professor. But leaving them unanswered, or worse, answering them with borrowed opinions that you don't own, but just borrow from others, from social media, from the news, from viral videos, that is exactly what's keeping you up. Because even if you have 6 of these 7 settled, it only takes one unsettled or inconsistent answer to keep you up at night. One unanswered or inconsistently answered question. One place where your stated beliefs and your actual life are pointing in different directions. One little inconsistency, one internal hypocrisy hiding in the dark. And your brain will find it, like a guided missile, every single time, just like your little toe finds the table leg. When your worldview is genuinely consistent, when your answers to these questions line up, from top to bottom, and you own them honestly, something happens, something wonderful. Your brain says, that feels good. It's not the absence of hard questions. It's not the end of struggle, but a deep, settled sense that your inner world is not at war with itself. That's what your logical mind is lunging for at 2 a.m. Your unconscious mind already recognizes your internal contradictions. So consciously noticing them, that takes honesty. And fixing them takes courage. Both are within reach, but only one of them will actually let you sleep. And ignoring them, as if ignorance is bliss, will come back to bite you one day. Just like it did me. But if we tackle these 7 questions hard, and we get our internal alignment straight, the best is yet to come.